Have you ever felt like you are waiting for one big moment to change your life? Like everything will shift once you get that job, meet that person, reach that goal? It is tempting to believe that transformation arrives in explosions in some dramatic, cinematic breakthrough. But what if that is not how real change happens? What if the truth is quieter, smaller, slower? This episode is not about motivation. It is not about chasing highs or waiting for inspiration. It is about what you do when no one is watching. What you repeat in silence. What you choose each morning before the world demands anything from you. Because the Stoics understood something that modern culture often forgets. It is not your feelings that define your future. It is your habits. And if you stay with me through this journey, you will walk away with more than just insight. You will walk away with a blueprint. A way of living built not on intensity, but on consistency. By the end of this, you will understand how to build identity through action, how to turn self-minded discipline into inner peace, and how to become someone strong enough to live on purpose every single day. Let us begin here with one truth the Stoics leave by: your character is not built in the spotlight. It is forged in the quiet repetition of your routine. You want to know who you are? Do not look at your dreams. Look at your habits. Do not measure yourself by what you feel once. Measure yourself by what you choose over and over again. It is not the single bold decision that shapes your life. It is the daily ones, the simple ones, the invisible ones. Because every small action you repeat is a vote. A vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you wake up early, when you move your body even when it is tired, when you journal instead of numb, breathe instead of snap, show up instead of excuse, these are not just habits. They are votes for strength, for clarity, for self-respect. And those votes compound. They grow into something deeper than behavior. They become identity. Most people get this backwards. They think you need confidence before you take action. That you need clarity before you commit. That you need to feel like the person you want to become before you act like them. But that is not how change works. The Stoics knew this. They did not wait for inspiration. They did not romanticize transformation. They practiced who they wanted to be daily, repeatedly, quietly. You do not become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by keeping your word when no one else is watching. That is why habits matter so much more than we think. Not because of what they accomplish in a single day, but because of what they reinforce over time. Every time you follow through on something you said you would do, even in a small way, you are sending a message to your brain. I am someone who does what they say. That message becomes a belief. That belief becomes a foundation. And from there, you build a new version of yourself, not overnight, but moment by moment. And here is the key: that version of you is already available. It is not hidden. It is not distant. It is waiting in your next repetition. What you do repeatedly is who you become. It is that simple. It is also that difficult. The Stoics were not obsessed with achieving. They were obsessed with aligning. Not with chasing goals for status, but with building habits that reflected the kind of person they believed they ought to be. To them, discipline was not about controlling your schedule. It was about shaping your soul. And that begins by asking one powerful question: who am I practicing being right now? Because every action is a practice. You are either practicing clarity or confusion, presence or distraction, patience or avoidance. Even when you think you are doing nothing, you are reinforcing something. When you hit snooze instead of rising, that is practice. When you scroll instead of reflect, that is practice. When you choose what is comfortable over what is necessary, that too is practice. And the Stoics knew that nothing, absolutely nothing, matters more than what you practice daily. Because that is where your character is formed. Not in the things you say you believe, but in the choices you make when your beliefs are tested. We all want to be someone strong, clear, disciplined, compassionate. But the Stoics remind us you do not become that person through hope. You become them through action. Repeated action. Especially when it is hard. You say you want to be patient. Practice patience when you are frustrated, not when you are calm. You say you want to be resilient. Practice showing up when you feel like quitting. You say you want to be focused. Practice putting the phone down when your mind begs for stimulation. You do not need to wait to be ready. You just need to start acting like who you want to be. The action creates the identity, not the other way around. This is what makes Stoic discipline so different from modern productivity. It is not about checking tasks off a list. It is about aligning your behavior with your values. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That is not philosophy for scholars. That is strategy for warriors. It means you decide this is who I choose to be, and then you act like it, over and over, until the world believes you. And eventually so do you. But here is where most people fall. They expect motivation to carry them. They wait to feel inspired. They wait to feel clear. But the Stoics would laugh at that. They did not trust feelings. Not because they denied them, but because they understood how inconsistent they are. One day you feel unstoppable. The next, you feel small and scattered. But discipline, that is what remains when motivation disappears. Discipline is what you do even when you are tired, even when no one notices, even when progress feels invisible. That is what builds emotional strength. That is what separates the person who hopes from the person who transforms. So let us ask again, who are you practicing being today? Because your habits are not just routines. They are rituals. They are small daily acts of devotion to your future self. Each time you show up for that version of you, you make it more real. And each time you break a promise to that version, you weaken the foundation you are trying to build. This is why the Stoics were so rigorous. Not because they feared failure, but because they feared drifting. They feared becoming someone they did not choose. So they chose intentionally, daily, even in the smallest things. What time they woke up, what words they used, how they moved through frustration, how they responded to delay. Every action was a reflection, a mirror, reinforcement. And this is what you must understand: small does not mean insignificant. Habits compound. They either build you or break you, but they never leave you unchanged. You think that skipped workout is harmless. That broken promise is trivial. That angry outburst is no big deal. But over time, that becomes who you are, or who you are becoming. This is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you up, because you do not need permission to begin. You do not need to fix everything at once. You only need to practice being the kind of person you respect today. In small ways. In quiet ways. In ways that no one else may ever see. Because the reward is not applause. The reward is peace. Integrity. Strength. The kind of strength that does not crumble when life tests you. Because life will test you. And when it does, your habits built in stillness will carry you. You will not rise to the level of your goals. You will fall to the level of your habits. And if you have built those habits wisely, you will not fall far. You will simply land on who you have been becoming all along. We live in a world that worships intensity, that glorifies the dramatic gesture, the bold leap, the grand transformation. But real change, the kind that lasts, has nothing to do with fireworks. It has everything to do with what you do today when no one is watching, with what you do tomorrow when you feel tired, with what you do again when progress feels invisible. The Stoics were not interested in heroic bursts. They were interested in consistency. That quiet, unwavering commitment to doing what is right, not when it is easy, but especially when it is hard. Because they understood a powerful truth: one disciplined step, taken every day, will take you further than 100 half-minus finished sprints. And that step does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be made. Discipline in Stoic philosophy was never about punishment. It was not self-denial for the sake of suffering. It was about alignment, making your actions match your values. Your behavior match your character. Your days match your deeper direction. And that means you do not need to do everything today. You only need to do something that moves you forward, no matter how small. It could be one clean meal, one workout, one honest journal entry, one conversation you have been avoiding, one breath before you react. That one act becomes a signal. It tells your mind, I am still in this. It tells your fear, you do not get to lead. It tells your future self, I have not forgotten you. And when you stack that signal day after day, it changes you. Slowly, quietly, permanently. Most people never get there. Not because they are not capable, but because they quit when it gets quiet. When progress slows. When the emotion fades. But emotion was never meant to be the fuel. Conviction is. Conviction says, even if no one claps, I will continue. Even if this is hard, I will continue. Even if it does not feel amazing right now, I will continue. Because it is not about how it feels today. It is about who you are building for tomorrow. And discipline is the bridge between those two selves. But here is where it gets even more powerful every time you follow through, especially when it is difficult. You build trust with yourself. That trust becomes a form of peace. You no longer question whether you will show up. You know you will. You no longer argue with your alarm clock, your calendar, your conscience. You have trained your body and mind to listen, to follow, to execute. That is not robotic. That is freedom. Because once you no longer need to be in the mood to take the right action, you are no longer a slave to your emotions. You are simply a builder of a stronger life. And that life is not built in weeks, or even months. It is built in repetitions, in micro-minus decisions, in doing what needs to be done, especially on the days you do not want to do it. So what does this look like in practice? It looks like setting a minimum standard for your habits. Not I will run 10 miles today, but I will move my body somehow no matter what. Not I will meditate for an hour, but I will pause, breathe, and observe even for 1 minute. Not I will write a book today, but I will write something to stay in motion. Because momentum is not about speed. It is about direction. And the Stoics lived this way, not perfectly but intentionally. They failed. They faltered. But they returned. Again and again. They did not chase perfection. They chased alignment. And when they fell, they did not shame themselves. They simply asked, what is the next right step? Then they took it. That is the mindset of the disciplined, the resilient, the warrior of the inner world. They do not fear setbacks. They use them as fuel. Because a bad day is not a broken identity. It is just a chance to recommit. And recommitment, the decision to return, is the secret no one talks about. Everyone is looking for the spark. Few are willing to stoke the fire. But you are here now. And that means you already know this path is not about massive leaps. It is about never stopping. It is about waking up and choosing to act not from how you feel, but from who you are becoming. And who you are becoming, that is being built today. Not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent acts of devotion. Discipline does not survive in chaos. Not for long. You can have the strongest will, the clearest goals, the deepest intentions, but if you are surrounded by noise, clutter, and temptation, eventually your system will break down. Not because you are weak, but because the environment you live in shapes your behavior far more than you think. The Stoics understood this long before modern science did. They knew if you want to change your life, you must also change the space in which your life happens. You do not just need better habits. You need better conditions to practice them. Because every habit is a relationship. A relationship between your values and your environment. And if your environment constantly contradicts what you say you want, discipline becomes a battle you will fight every day and slowly lose. Let me explain. You say you want focus, but your phone is always within reach, buzzing, lighting up, interrupting every quiet thought. You say you want to eat better, but your kitchen is stocked with the exact foods you are trying to avoid. You say you want to sleep earlier, but your bedroom looks more like an entertainment center than a place of rest. None of this is about morality. It is about friction. The Stoics did not say, try harder. They said, live better, and that starts with removing unnecessary resistance. Because it is not just about what you should do, it is about what you make easy to do. Discipline thrives where the path is clear, and often that clarity begins with subtraction. So what can you remove? What distraction? What toxic input? What item, person, or pattern that makes your best behavior harder than it needs to be? Do not just try to resist it. Remove it. Do not just be strong. Be strategic. Because here is the truth: your habits are not just the result of willpower. They are the result of proximity. You eat what is near. You check what is loud. You repeat what is convenient. So make discipline convenient. Make peace easy to find. Make your values visible in your space, your schedule, your circle. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." He was not just talking about friendship. He was talking about alignment. Because who and what you keep close will either pull you forward or drag you back. So look around your life. Is your room a place of reflection or of stimulation? Is your calendar protecting your time or inviting distraction? Is your social media feeding your growth or feeding your comparison? You cannot build a still mind in a chaotic environment. You cannot cultivate clarity when your daily input is cluttered. And you cannot expect to feel strong when your habits must constantly fight against the space you live in. So change the space. Even a little. Organize your morning. Place your journal where you can see it. Put your phone in another room while you work. Make the gym bag easy to grab. Make the water bottle easier to reach than the soda. Make your values louder than your impulses. That is not control. That is wisdom. That is the difference between forcing change and supporting it. Because the Stoics did not fight with their surroundings, they designed them. They did not rely on will alone. They practiced foresight, preparation, intention. Marcus Aurelius wrote often at dawn before the noise of duty, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary for clarity. He carved out a space, internal and external, to return to himself. You can do the same. Your room, your schedule, your screen, your table, they are all part of your mind. They are extensions of your habits. And when those extensions reflect peace, discipline, purpose, your inner world becomes easier to protect. You no longer fight every day to be your best self. You simply become it because your environment supports it. This is how you make discipline sustainable. Not by pushing harder, but by removing what pushes against you. Most people build habits because they want something. A better body. A sharper mind. A more successful career. And that is fine. That is human. But the Stoics remind us of a deeper motivation, one that carries more weight and creates more resilience. You do not just build habits to get what you want. You build habits to avoid becoming who you do not want to be. That changes everything. Because when discipline is just about results, you will abandon it the moment results feel slow. But when discipline is about identity, about protecting the kind of person you are choosing to become, you will keep going, even in the dark. Even when no one notices. even when it would be easier to stop. Seneca warned of this trap. He said, "It is not that we do not know what to do. It is that we do not do what we know. And often, the reason we stop doing what we know is that we have forgotten who we are trying not to become." Let us be honest. You know what happens when you stop training your body. You know what happens when you stop honoring your values. When you stop saying no. When you stop journaling. Stop waking up early. Stop protecting your peace. You have lived through the cost of that version of you. You have seen what your life becomes when you drift. So let your habits be a form of self-respect. Let them be a way of saying, "I will not go back there." Not out of shame, but out of clarity. Out of love for the grounded, present, awake version of you that only exists when your actions are aligned. This is why Stoic habits are not about optimization. They are about preservation. Because the world will always try to pull you off course. Through comfort. Through temptation. Through pressure. And without a clear identity, a version of yourself you are protecting, you will say yes to the wrong things. You will drift into patterns that feel good short-term but hollow you out long-term. That is why your discipline must not just be fueled by desire. It must also be protected by memory. Memory of who you used to be when you lived without intention. Memory of what it felt like to spiral, to react, to numb, to distract. Do not fear that version of you. Just refuse to feed it anymore. Every time you return to your habits, even after a fall, you are saying, "I remember. I know what happens when I stop. And I will not let that version lead again." This makes your habits sacred. Not rigid, not harsh, but sacred. They become not just actions but anchors. When emotions rise, they anchor you. When chaos returns, they steady you. When doubt speaks, they silence it not through argument but through evidence. Because that is the gift habits give you, not just better results, but better proof. Proof that you are not that person anymore. Proof that you can trust yourself. That you can be counted on. That you can make a promise and keep it even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. Most people do not need more inspiration. They need more reminders of who they are when they are aligned. And your habits. They are those reminders. Even something as small as making your bed, journaling 5 lines, drinking water each act says, "I am awake. I am here. I am not on autopilot anymore." And that message compounds. Over time, you become someone who no longer asks, "What should I do today?" You already know. You just do it. Not because it is exciting. Not because it feels powerful. But because it is who you are now. And that kind of discipline? It builds a life where you no longer chase stability. You live it. You embody it. You created one honest repetition at a time. Discipline is not just about what you do. It is also about what you refuse to do. It is about what you subtract, what you protect, what you say no to, not once, but every day. We live in a world that celebrates more productivity, more goals, more inputs. But the Stoics saw through that illusion. They knew that peace does not come from addition, it comes from simplicity. Simplicity is not minimalism for style. It is minimalism for the soul. It means clearing the clutter not just from your space, but from your schedule, your mind, your habits, your identity. Because every yes you give to what is not essential is a no to the life you say you want to build. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." And most people never reach peace not because they lack strength, but because they lack clarity. They say yes to everything and wonder why they feel scattered. They take on too much and wonder why they burn out. They chase more and wonder why they still feel empty. But you are different now, because you understand every habit must be protected by boundaries. Boundaries of time, Boundaries of attention. Boundaries of energy. You cannot build something sacred if you keep letting everything in. So what do you need to start saying no to? Is it the meetings that do not matter? The scrolling that numbs? The late-night habits that sabotage your mornings? The relationships that pull you away from your values? Do not shame yourself. Just observe, and then choose. Choose to subtract what dilutes you. Because simplicity is not about having less. It is about making space for more of what matters. And that space, that is where your most important habits breathe. When your calendar is packed with noise, your mind cannot hear what is truly essential. When your home is filled with clutter, your discipline is suffocated before it begins. When your relationships are filled with drama, your peace is nowhere to land. So simplify. Not as a lifestyle trend, as a form of spiritual defense. The Stoics lived this way long before it was popular. They wore simple clothes, ate simple meals, spoke with clarity, moved with purpose, not because they were austere, but because they wanted to protect their attention. They knew your attention is your most valuable resource, and whatever steals it steals your future. So protect it. Wake up and ask, what can I remove today that creates more space for who I am becoming? It could be one app, one obligation, one toxic pattern, one excuse. It does not have to be loud, just honest. Because the truth is, discipline often looks like quiet refusal. Refusing to check your phone first thing. Refusing to over-explain your decisions. Refusing to take on what is not yours. Refusing to abandon your routine because someone else does not understand it. This is not coldness. This is clarity. Clarity that says my peace matters. My focus matters. My habits matter. And I am done giving those things away to everything and everyone. This kind of discipline is not built in hype. It is built in subtraction. Not from a place of lack, but from a place of inner richness. You no longer need to prove anything. You just need to protect what is already true. And your habits, they become easier not because life is easy, but because you have stopped making it harder than it needs to be. You have removed the noise, and what is left is enough. No matter how strong your habits become, there will be days when you fall, when you miss the workout, sleep in, snap at someone you love, give in to the old urge, lose the rhythm. And in those moments, a dangerous voice will rise inside you. Not anger, not shame, but something more subtle: permission to quit. It will say you failed again. Why even try? And this is where most people lose themselves. Not in the fall itself, but in the story they attach to the fall. They think discipline means never slipping. The Stoics knew better. They expected the fall, but they trained for the return. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When jarred unavoidably by circumstance, quickly return to yourself, and do not remain out of rhythm longer than you must. Quickly return." That is the Stoic secret. Not perfection, but recovery. Because emotional strength is not shown in how well you perform when everything is aligned. It is shown in how fast you forgive yourself and return when it is not. Forgiveness is not a weakness. Forgiveness is what protects your ability to begin again. Think about it. You do not break a habit because you missed one day. You break it because missing one day becomes a shame spiral. Because instead of saying that was one step off, you say, I am back at zero. But you are not back at zero. You are further than you think. You have history now. You have memory. You have built something even if it cracks. The Stoic understands that failure is feedback, not identity. If the habit broke, maybe it was too rigid, too tied to emotion, too dependent on mood. Maybe what broke was not you, but the system. So you adjust. You reflect. You ray minus center. Then you begin again without self minus hate. Because you are not here to perform discipline. You are here to live it. And living it means you will fall. It means your humanity will get in the way. You will be tired. You will be triggered. You'll be overwhelmed. And you will make choices that do not align. But what matters most is what happens next. Do you double down on the failure? Or do you remember who you are? You are someone who returns. You are someone who no longer needs to be perfect to stay on the path. You do not need a perfect week to prove your worth. You just need to show up today. And the most powerful day to show up is the day after you failed. Because that is the day you reclaim your direction. That is the day you say my habits are not here to impress anyone. They are here to protect me. And I need them now more than ever. When you start again, do not try to make up for lost time. Just reconnect. Not from guilt. From groundedness. From humility. From strength. This is why Stoic discipline lasts. It is flexible. It is honest. It bends when you fall, but it does not break. It allows space for failure. And then it invites you back without punishment. You are not late. You are not weak. You are simply on the way back. And every time you come back, you build more trust in yourself. Because you now know even when I fall, I do not flee. Even when I slip, I do not spiral. Even when I lose rhythm, I do not lose who I am. That is unshakable. Somewhere along the path, something begins to shift. At first, you build habits because you want a result. A better body. A clearer mind. A stronger identity. The discipline feels like a tool. Something you use to reach a goal. But eventually, if you stay with it long enough, discipline stops being a means to an end. It becomes the reward. You stop asking, when will this pay off? And start saying, this is the payoff. That shift changes everything. Because now you are no longer depending on external proof to stay consistent. You are no longer waiting for the world to clap before you keep going. You have stopped living from result and started living from alignment. This is where the Stoic path gets real. Because if you only train, journal, breathe, write, meditate, or show up when the scale moves, when the number grows, when the applause comes, you are still trapped. You are still chained to outcomes. And outcomes are unstable. They are slow. They are unpredictable. They depend on variables you do not always control. But the practice, that is yours. You control when you rise. You control how you move. You control what you choose. And when you begin to love the choosing more than the reward, you have won. Because now, even on the days when progress is invisible, you are still progressing. Not because of what you achieve, but because of who you refuse to stop being. The Stoics lived this deeply. They were not chasing success. They were chasing virtue. Not because it got them praise, but because it made them clear, grounded, free. They believed the good life is not measured in outcomes. It is measured in practice. And practice is what builds peace. It is what creates stability in an unstable world. Because when the world shakes, you will not. You have trained for this. You have built yourself in private so public chaos does not define you. You have kept your promises not because they made you rich, famous, or validated, but because they made you whole. That is what this all comes down to. Wholeness. The kind of wholeness that comes from waking up and doing what you said you would do, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. Because now, you are no longer trying to become someone. You have become someone. Someone you trust. Someone you return to. Someone whose identity is built on something unshakable. And that something is not perfection. It is rhythm. It is direction. It is devotion. The kind of devotion that wakes up not for reward, but for remembrance. I do this because this is who I am. That is the height of Stoic practice. When discipline stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a home. When habits stop feeling like control and start feeling like honor. When routine stops feeling like repetition and starts feeling like ritual. You are not just doing the habit. You are the habit. And the peace that gives you, the power in that. No outcome can give you what this process already has. So let this be your reminder. You are no longer chasing. You are simply continuing. Continuing to return. Continuing to show up. Continuing to live like the person you respect. And that is everything. There is a silence that comes with self-minus discipline. A quiet distance between you and the world when you begin to live with intention. At first, you think that discipline itself will bring connection, that becoming your best self will naturally attract support. But what often happens instead is the opposite. You start waking up early and no one joins you. You start saying no to things that drain you and people call you difficult. You start choosing stillness over drama and they say you are boring. And you begin to realize this path is not always loud. This path is not always popular. This path, at least for a while, might feel lonely. But the Stoics were ready for that. They did not see solitude as suffering. They saw it as space. Space to hear your own voice, not the world's echo. Space to choose your next move, not react to someone else's. Space to train, to reflect, to become without applause. Because applause is not the point. Your alignment is. The truth is, once you begin to honor your path, fewer people will understand you. And that is okay. You are not here to be understood. You are here to be aligned. People might not see your 5 a.m. workouts. They might not hear your inner dialogue before you say the calm thing instead of the cruel one. They might not feel the resistance you overcame to do the right thing when the easy one was begging. But you know. You feel it. And that is enough. Because what you are building now is not for validation. It is for foundation. It is so when the storm hits, you are ready not because others prepared you, but because you prepared yourself. That is the path of the Stoic. The warrior without the spotlight. The architect of invisible strength. And yes, it will sometimes feel like you are walking alone. Like no one sees what it costs you to stay calm. To stay consistent. To stay true. But let me remind you, you are not alone in your solitude. There is an entire lineage of quiet, grounded, self-minus laid humans who chose the same. They chose the early mornings, the hard conversations, the boundaries, the breath between impulse and response. They chose discomfort in the short term to protect clarity in the long. And in doing so, they discovered something sacred. They discovered that the reward of discipline is not praise. It is self-minus respect. You can look yourself in the mirror and know even when it was hard, I stayed with it. Even when no one clapped, I did the work. Even when it got lonely, I returned. That is not just strength. That is freedom. Because the more self-minus led you become, the less you need the world to mirror your worth. You stop asking for permission to be who you are. You stop shrinking to fit old identities. You stop breaking your rhythm just to avoid other people's discomfort. And when they say you have changed, you do not flinch. You smile, because you have changed, not to impress them, but to protect what matters. And what matters is not whether they get it. What matters is whether you keep going. Even now, even here, especially here in the silence. Because the silence is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the place where your future self is quietly being born. We live in a world that confuses freedom with indulgence. That tells you being free means doing whatever you want, whenever you want. Saying whatever comes to mind. Following every impulse. But the Stoics saw through that illusion. They knew true freedom is not the absence of boundaries. It is the presence of self minus command. And self minus command is built through discipline. Because if you cannot say no to yourself, you are not free. If you cannot stop the impulse, pause the reaction, choose the higher road, you are not living in freedom. You are living in slavery. Not to another person, but to your own untrained mind. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Let that settle in. Freedom is not getting what you want. It is choosing who you want to be and acting in alignment with that version, no matter what your emotions tell you. Freedom is not doing everything. It is having the strength to do what matters most, and the courage to ignore the rest. This is why discipline is not restriction. Discipline is liberation. The ability to say, I do not need to chase every desire. I do not need to entertain every mood. I do not need to abandon my structure just because it is uncomfortable today. That kind of power, it cannot be bought. It must be built. And you build it through practice, through repetition, through days that do not feel impressive but leave you stronger nonetheless. Think about the most free people you know. They are not reckless. They are rooted. They do not need chaos to feel alive. They have created a life that sustains itself through rhythm, values, and clarity. They say no easily. They rise early. They move with purpose. And most importantly, they know themselves. That is what Stoic discipline gives you. Not just results, but relationship with yourself. You begin to understand your own mind, your patterns, your excuses, your distractions. And once you understand them, you are no longer ruled by them. You gain distance. You gain awareness. And with that awareness, you gain choice. Now, when temptation calls, you do not obey. You observe. You pause. You ask, will this action serve the person I am becoming or pull me back into someone I already outgrew? That question becomes your compass. It keeps you aligned not just with your goals, but with your values. And when you act from values consistently, over time you no longer need motivation. You simply move, because it is who you are now. You are someone who does not just talk about freedom. You live it, through your calendar, your habits, your words, your response to adversity. And yes, that freedom comes with cost. You will miss out on the quick high. You will miss out on the easy route. You will miss out on the crowd's approval. But what you gain is so much more. You gain stillness. You gain direction. You gain pride, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that whispers, you did not abandon yourself today. That is real freedom. The freedom to walk through chaos without losing your calm. The freedom to feel desire without being consumed by it. The freedom to fail and still show up tomorrow. Because you know your peace is not found in what the world gives you. It is found in what you choose to practice every day. And you? You have chosen discipline. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. At some point in this journey, something changes. You stop thinking just about yourself, your habits, your progress, your clarity. You begin to realize that your discipline is not only for you. It is for those around you. For the people who are watching you even when they say nothing. For the people you influence even when you do not notice. Because self-minus mastery, when practiced long enough, becomes leadership. Not the loud kind. Not the kind with titles or recognition. But the kind that radiates quietly, steadily, unmistakably. The kind that gives others permission to believe they can be strong too. This is where your habits begin to serve a deeper purpose. They are no longer just about getting better. They are about being better for others. When you stay calm in a storm, you create space for others to breathe. When you keep your promises, you show others what integrity looks like. When you continue, day after day. To show up without needing reward, you show others that it is possible to build peace from within. The Stoics never pursued greatness for glory. They pursued it because they knew every moment of self-command creates ripple effects. When you walk with clarity, you light the path for someone else, even if they never say thank you. Even if they never tell you they noticed. They did. Because presence cannot be faked, and discipline cannot be hidden. It shows in how you sit, in how you speak, in how you hold space when someone else breaks. This is why your habits matter more than ever now. Because in a world of noise, you are becoming someone others can trust. Not because you are perfect, but because you are anchored. When everyone else reacts, you respond. When everyone else escapes, you remain. When everyone else burns out, you breathe, adjust, and return. That kind of example. It is medicine. Not just for you, but for the people quietly trying to heal through you. You never know who is looking at you, not for motivation, but for proof. Proof that it is possible to move without drama, to grow without ego, to fall without quitting. You do not need to fix anyone. You only need to become the version of you that you once needed. The version who keeps going. The version who forgives fast, loves wide, and acts with intention even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. That version of you does not raise their voice, but their presence raises the room. That version of you does not preach, but people feel the difference just standing next to you. That version of you builds strength that is quiet but contagious. This is not pressure. This is purpose. It means your habits now carry weight. Not because you are performing, but because you are holding. Holding the line. Holding the standard. Holding space for others to rise not by force, but by example. And that kind of leadership, that kind of discipline, it echoes beyond the body, beyond the journal, beyond the breath. It becomes legacy. Because one day, someone will say, I changed because I saw how you lived. So here you are. After all the repetition, after the quiet mornings, after the hard days, after the moments no one saw but you showed up anyway. After all the breath work, the boundaries, the brutal honesty with yourself. You made it here not because of one massive shift, but because of thousands of small choices. And the truth is, you are not becoming someone new. You are returning to someone ancient. Someone you have always been before distraction, before doubt, before fear started whispering that you were not enough. Discipline, in the end, is not about becoming superhuman. It is about becoming deeply, fully human again. Because what is more human than keeping your word? Than moving with intention? Then standing in the chaos of a loud world and saying, I will not abandon myself today. That is not ambition. That is alignment. And now that you have seen what that feels like, you cannot unsee it. You know too much now. You know the cost of drifting. You know the ache of falling off track, not just in schedule, but in soul. You know the tension that builds when your values and your actions stop speaking the same language. And more importantly, you know how to come back. Because this journey did not teach you how to be perfect. It taught you how to return. Return to your center. Return to your breath. Return to the version of you that moves with clarity and compassion and calm, even when no one else does. That is the real gift of discipline. Not the body, not the streak, not the habit tracker, but the ability to find yourself again when the world tries to make you forget. And yes, life will try. It will distract you, overwhelm you, tempt you with the comfortable path. But the stoic in you, the steady one you have been building, he is ready now. Ready to walk through discomfort. Ready to feel fully but not be ruled by the feeling. Ready to act not from impulse, but from identity. And that identity? It is no longer fragile. It does not bend with opinion. It does not shatter with failure. It is quiet, steady, intentional. You do not need to force it. You only need to follow it. Every day. Even on the days you feel off. Even on the days you miss. Even on the days you question everything. Because those days are not the end. They are an invitation. To choose again. To begin again. To recommit not to being perfect, but to being present. You are not here to impress. You are here to live in alignment. And that means your discipline is not a burden. It is a form of love. Love for your future self. Love for the people your presence will serve. Love for the kind of life that does not shake every time emotion knocks. So take this final truth with you. You are already enough. You do not need to earn your worth through effort. But you do protect your peace through effort. And that effort is sacred. Your habits are not just behavior. They are an act of remembrance. I weigh to say, I refuse to forget who I am. And from that place, you will move forward. Still, certain, and free. Because freedom is not doing whatever you want. It is becoming the person who no longer wants to do what breaks them. That is what you have built here. Not perfection, not productivity, but power. The kind you carry in silence. The kind you do not need to announce. The kind that stays seven when the motivation fades. You are no longer chasing clarity. You are living it. Now go walk like it. Every step, every breath, every quiet decision no one sees. They all count, and they always have.